Okay, let's get this show on the road. So the studio is a little different than the studios that we've asked you to do in the past, right? A little bit more open in terms of instruction, but we're getting to be more and more skilled programmers, so that's okay. The first thing that it asked us to do is explicitly define the relationship between our two models, the user and the movie classes that we worked on in previous parts of the studio. So there's a couple things that we need to do to make that happen. We can start with the user class is what it asks us to start with. All right, so the user, what do I need to add here to tie the user class to the movie class? What do I need to start? DB relationship. So I need to make a new column. We'll call it, sorry, my mind is just blanking right now. We'll call it what? Movies, thank you. And then we'll use db.relationship. Is it lowercase r? Yeah. And then what information do I need to provide to this relationship? That's where things get a little bit tricky, right? Yeah.
You have to put in the title of the object that you're trying to relate to.
Right.
So I think it would just be capital M in print. I think.
So the type of object, the
Oh, I think it has to be quotes.
has to be in quotes. So the type of object that I am making a relationship to, right? And then there's something else that we typically are going to include here as well. What's that? I'm sorry? No, I just didn't hear you. Am I doing something wrong? What else do we need to include here to define this relationship? So I know that the user is going to be pointing to some movie objects, and then I have to specify then what value from the movie object is going to be referring to a user. We actually have a name for that. It's called the backref. So backref equals, and then we need to put some value in here where this value actually represents the name of a field in the movie class. Well, we don't actually know what that's called yet, right? We haven't made that field yet. So we can call it owner. That's what it was called in the prep works, right? And it's relevant here as well. Okay? And so then now we can go talk about what to do on the movie side of things, right? One thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to add in that field, self.owner, which, again, what is the type of this field? What data type is that field going to be? It's an object. It's a user object. That's what I expect it to be. It's going to be a user object, right? So where do I get this user object from? How am I going to set this value in my constructor? I have to pass it in as a parameter, right? So I can no longer just create a movie without having a user associated with that movie. That's what we're saying. There has to be a user associated with every single movie now in the database. So I'll pass in another parameter here and set it. And then we're almost done creating this relationship. I then also have to specify the terms of the relationship on this side of the relationship as well, right? So here we're adding another column to the movie table, and that column is going to be what exactly? It's going to be an ID, right? It's going to be a foreign key, right? It's going to be a foreign key pointing back to the user that owns it. So we'd call it owner ID, and then what do we say here? db dot column, oops. And then we pass in the data type, right? db dot integer, I think. But then there's something else that we have to provide here as well. What does that look like? I actually don't remember what it looks like. Is it foreign key? db.foreign key? Underscore key? I forget what this looks like. I'm sorry? Capital F and capital K, thank you. Like that? Yeah? And then there's still, I think, one additional piece. We have to pass in some information, so I need to specify, right, which value from this object is going to represent that foreign key. And we know that we want it to be the ID value from this owner object. And we just discussed that the type of this owner object is going to be a user, right? So the way that we specify that, I believe, and somebody correct me if my syntax is off, because I might have the syntax off, but we're telling it that there is a user object, and we know where that is, right? It's this owner. The backgraph actually tells us that this is going to be a user object. Go pull the ID value out of that user object, and that's what you should use as the owner ID value, the foreign key for this particular relationship. This is complicated. This is not easy stuff. This is one of the more complex things that we've asked you to do up until this point. So yeah.
Question for clarification. The backgraph
Yes.
being assigned to the owner variable, that's referring to the attribute that you created in the constructor method?
That's correct, yeah. So if I wanted to make this something different, right, I could call this user if I wanted to, but then this has to match.
Got it. So it refers
Those-
to the instance variable, not like the variable that has.
Correct, yes, that is correct. It refers to the field, the instance variable in the class that I'm making a relationship to. Yes, that is correct. Okay?
When you establish the foreign key,
Uh-huh.
so in the key class,
Yes,
the name user,
yes.
that's not referring to the class title. What if it was, it would be a capital.
It actually is referring to the class. I don't know why it's not capitalized, actually. That is something that bothers me a little bit.
It bothers me too.
Yeah. But it is
It doesn't bother me.
it is referring it's referring to the class. That is correct.
Would you capitalize it?
That's a good question. We could always try and see. Let's see. Because the next thing I need to do, right, is get rid of my old tables. They're no longer valid, and recreate them. So if this doesn't work, it'll tell us when I try to recreate my tables. So let's do that part next. I'm going to go back over here and start up Python. We've done this enough times. From main import. What do I need to import? I need to import DB, movie, and user, right? That's taking longer than I thought. Okay. DB dot drop. Is it drop all? So it's telling me there's an error here. It doesn't. There's our capital. There's our capital U. Does not like it. Does not like it. I don't know why. So actually, here's the way to think about it, right? This is it the name of the object? Yes, but technically what it's referring to is the name of the table. Yeah. Which is based on the name of the object, right? That's the proper way to think about what's going on here. Is it still a little awkward? Yeah, it is. But that's what's going on. All right, let's try it again and see if you're a little happier now. I don't know if, maybe I don't know. I'm just going to try and do the create and see. What did I do wrong? Something fishy is going on here, and I'm not sure what. I'm sorry? Line 23. That's okay. Yeah, that's all right. I'm just trying to drop. I thought I did. Oh, but I have to re-import it again after yeah, my bad. I always forget that I have to do that. All right. From main import DB user movie. And now Okay, cool. The drop worked now, right? The drop worked, and now I should hopefully be able to do the create. All right, cool, good. So now, for the sake of making our lives a little easier, I'm just going to create a user object real quick, make it user so that I have somebody to log in as. So, and the constructor for my user object didn't change, right? Did not change. So all I have to provide for that is the email address and the password. So, and password. Oops, I forgot a comma. Okay. And then I'll say, what is it? User dot add user. Oh, thank you. Yeah. db.session. Thank you. User, and then db.commit. db.session.commit. Wow, I am on fire today. Okay. It inserted the user. Cool. All right. And so we can double check and make sure that everything is still functional by starting up the app and then trying to log in as that user. So, oh, I don't have gotta copy it. Copy, paste. All right. It's telling me to register. I actually shouldn't have to do that because I inserted that user. So, okay. And we're logged in. Cool. So it worked. Our user's there. My watch list is empty right now because we just recreated the database. There's nothing. So, I can add some movies if I want to. And I've got a problem, right? It's broken. So we still have some work to do, right? We changed the constructor of how a movie works. It now requires an owner, correct? I can't construct a movie without an owner. So that's still some extra work that we have to do. And then we also have to reflect that change throughout the whole rest of the app as well, that movies now have owners, right? Before we do that, let's do a little bit of refactoring. So that was sort of the step 2, is doing a little bit of refactoring, trying to organize things a little bit. And so we're going to really emphasize this MVC pattern by moving our models to a new file, for starters, and then we're going to separate out some of the app code as well. So this is pretty straightforward. There's not a lot of fancy stuff going on here. So I'll make a file called models.py, and then I'll go grab my models from here and copy them in to that file. Okay, sure. All right. We'll save that. Okay, and then we are going to create another file called app.py, and it even tells you what needs to go inside of that file. So we can actually just copy this code directly. All right. So I'll take that code and copy it in here. And now we've got our code a little bit more organized. Notice I didn't actually change the way that anything works. I just reorganized a little bit. So there's my model code. Here's my other stuff. And then we may need to actually do some importing now to reflect the fact that we have separated those files out. I still need my models, right? So I think I'm still going to have to import those. From models, import movie user, because I'm still going to need to use those in my controller down here, right? I think everything else should be okay, though. And then I can get rid of this stuff, actually. Wait, I think I might have gotten a little greedy there. No, that's okay. I can get rid of that stuff. And then I need to import app, right? From app. Am I doing this right? Import app. And DB. Thank you. And DB. So we didn't change the functionality of anything. We just kind of reorganized our code a little bit. And now we can talk about the problems that we need to solve. So anytime that I create a movie, which I do have an instance of that down here when I add in a movie. Anytime that I create a movie, where is it? Here it is. Right here, right? I now need to have a user to feed into that movie, correct? So how am I going to get that user? What do I need to do to get the user? Yeah.
So we're assuming when a user is at this point,
Yep.
they are officially logged in.
That's correct, yeah.
Which means their email is in that session.
That's correct, yes.
So we can run a query that filters by that set email
Yes.
in that session.
Yes.
Grab that user object, store it in variables, and pass it in.
Exactly.
To
And that's something that I expect that we may need to do in multiple locations. So I think to make our lives a little easier, what I would like to do is create a little method up here, a little function, to just get the currently logged in user. Right? I'm just gonna do that in a separate function, and then I can call this function whenever I need to figure out who's logged in. It'll simplify our design a little bit. So I need to query the users table, user.query.filter by, and then we're saying that the email is going to be equal to, you said the session, right? Session, what are we saying? What's the key? Email, or is it user? Oh, it's user, yeah, you're right, user. User. Dot first, right? And so then if I need to get that logged in user, I can just call this function wherever it's appropriate for me to do so. And one such place is when I'm adding a movie, which is down here, I can say get logged in user. And that will pass in the appropriate user. And now we should actually be able to go back and check and see if I can properly add movies again. That should work now. Let's go back and see if that does what it needs to do. Oh boy, yeah, let's see. All right. Oops, do I need to restart it? I do, yeah. Do I have a thing? I have a thing. Name DB is not defined. Okay. So what's the problem? The problem is that my models rely on SQL Alchemy stuff, right? But I have not actually included any imports to SQL Alchemy in this file. So I need to do this stuff inside my models class, I believe. Let's see if that makes it happier. Well, did I import the wrong thing? What did I do? I should be importing DB. I think you're right. From app import DB. I think you're right. All right, there we go. That's better. Thank you. So now we can just go back to our page and hopefully refresh here. We're still logged in, so that's good. And now I can try to add a movie and cross our fingers, and hopefully this time it's gonna do it. It says that it did it, and if we go back, it's actually on my list now. So we fixed that piece, right? We fixed that piece. We're still not quite done yet, though. For example, if I make a new user real quick, wait a second, that's not my movie. That was the movie for the other user. I don't want to see that movie. That's not mine. I didn't put that on my list, right? So what do we need to do to fix that? There's two ways that we could handle this, or actually probably more than two, but I've seen, two prominent ways of going about this. Yeah.
just from like a general concept standpoint, I think we're going to need to do some sort of like filtering based on the owner of said.
Right. So we have some additional information now. I'm not grabbing all of the movies. I'm just grabbing the movies for whoever's logged in, right? Whoever that current user is. And so actually what we can do is modify these functions, get current watch list and get watched movies. These are currently getting every single movie, right? But that's not what we want. We want to get only the movies for whoever is logged in, right? So we can do that. We can get the watch list. So one way we need an extra piece of information to get the watch list now, right? We need to know the ID number of the person who's logged in. And so we can add that parameter, right? And then add an additional value here to say that we also need the owner ID to equal whatever ID has been given to us. And I can do the same thing for get watched movies as well. Oops, except I missed. Owner ID equals ID. And that's going to break some stuff, right? Because anytime that I call one of these two functions, I now have to provide this ID number. I didn't have to do that before, but I have to now. So I have to go figure out everywhere that I've used this function. I don't think it shows up in a ton of places, but it does show up in a few places. Let's see. I mean, I guess I could just try to run it and it will tell me. Or I could just do a search and find it. There's one, right? All right, cool. So how do I get the ID of the user who's currently logged in? I do, yeah. So how do I do that? Sure, yeah. So when I render the template, I have to pass in the list of movies.
So right now, that function definition does not have a list of that movie.
Actually, I just need the ID number. I don't even need the whole object. I just need the ID number.
So this is assuming that we like remember the ID number.
Well, not necessarily, right? I could get the instance of the user and then ask it for its ID number. In fact, I think that's what we need to do here. We wrote something earlier that can help us.
Oh, the
get logged in user. Yeah, get logged in user. I can call that get logged in user, right? And then grab the ID value from the user that it gives back to me. Does that make sense? What I did with that little snippet of code? If you don't like it typed out like that, maybe it would help to see it written out in a little bit longer, right? Current user equals get logged in user, and then I can just say current user dot ID. This is exactly, it's going to get us to exactly the same place as how I had it up there the first time, right? And then I need to do the same thing for get watched movies. So I need to find where that's used. So there's one instance, right? Get logged in user dot ID. And there's another one right here. Get logged in user dot ID. Okay. And now we're ready to take this for a spin. If I refresh this page and it works, right, what should happen? That movie should go away, right? Because that's not my movie. So let's see. All right, that movie's gone. Well, let's add another movie, not The Matrix. I don't know. Right, we add it to the list. So now I have this movie, not The Matrix. If I log back out and into the original account, I should still see the first movie, but not this one, right? If it's working properly, they should be distinctly separate lists. So if I log out of here and do example, oh, not registered, whoops. And do example, what was the password? I think it was password, yeah. Log in, there's The Matrix, right? There's The Matrix, but not The Matrix. That was a poor choice. But anyway, we did it. We now have distinctly separate lists of movies for all of our users. So our app is, I think, very nearly functional at this point, right? There's still a little bit of cleanup that we have to do next week. Yeah, it's almost done. Are there any questions? I think we did everything in the studio. Are there any questions?
Do we know if the ratings function will render?
Yeah, that's a good question. So if I hit that I watched it here, so it's gone, and I should see it on the ratings. There it is. And then if I log out into the other account, I should still see an empty list there, right? So we can try that real quick. So there's my watch list, and that one's empty now. So yeah, that works too. Because we did both functions the same way, get watch list and get watched movies, we did them both the same way at the same time. So it took care of all of it. Yep. That's the nice thing. Again, I mean, this is going way back to something we've talked about almost since the beginning of class, but using functions in that way, right, really saved us a lot of time and work. If we had not used functions in that way, we would have had to go find all those different spots and do a lot more work in each of those spots. So, all right, we are out of time, which is good because we finished. So thank you very much, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you on Monday.